Hi there. Just making sure everything's working. Hi. All right, well, we'll get started. How's everybody doing? How's everybody dealing with the lockdown? Is everybody keeping sane? Dealing. I mean, that's a good answer. Hey, thank you for the subscription. Lots of game dev time, yeah. I can imagine. Let me turn the music down a little bit. There we go. So yeah, welcome. If you don't know who I am, I'm Ben Prunty. I am a game music guy. I'm independent. I did the music for a whole bunch of game soundtracks, including FTL, Faster Than Light, Into the Breach, The Dark Side Detective, Gravity Ghost. Currently working on Subnautica Below Zero. For clarification, I did not work on the original Subnautica. I joined the team after they started on this follow-up. So I'm going to be talking about a whole bunch of music stuff for this presentation. Oh, nice! You got the FTL vinyl. Those are out of print now. They're like a collector's item. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about my career as like an indie and like how I got started. I'm going to talk about like some advice that I can give, the best advice I can give on a career as an indie musician or just an indie in general. I'm going to talk about starting out, like building your own music studio in the same vein as my own. And then after that, we're going to do a little bit of a music workshop, and I will be switching to this view, and I'm gonna write some music on the fly and like show you some of my process. We're gonna make something that sounds a bit FTL-like, and it'll be really fun. And I want to encourage you to ask questions, ask whatever questions you have on your mind. No stupid questions. The reason I have a career now is because I asked a lot of questions and did a lot of inquiry everywhere I could. So, yeah, feel free to ask questions as much as you like. I will do my best to answer them. But yeah, hello, welcome. Yeah, this is gonna be cool. If you find the music distracting in the background, just let me know. Usually I'm like talking and writing, but this time I'm doing a format where I talk first and then we write music, so I decided to put some of my tracks in the background. But if it's too distracting, we can change it. I can just turn it off. So the first part, oh, here we go, we got a question already, awesome. Do you collab with other indie artists? Not usually, I did a track for Celeste, which was a rearrangement of Lena Raine's soundtrack. That was sort of a collaboration. But not usually, no. Thank you. I'm glad you like the Below Zero soundtrack. Yeah, I really love working on Below Zero because I loved Subnautica already. What programs do you use for recording and mixing? Well, we'll get to that in depth later, but the first to start with, I write everything in Cubase. That's my digital audio workstation, and I record. I have like a Focusrite Scarlett USB audio interface, and that sort of handles the audio. And I have this nice little studio. I should have posted a picture or something of the studio so you could see it better. This camera is stationary, so I can't really move it around to show you. But yeah, I record everything in Cubase, and I use a lot of software instruments. But we'll get into more detail later on. So we got another question. What programs do you use for recording and mixing? Oh no, I just answered that one. Sorry. Trying to keep track of a lot of things at once. Dream game to write a track for. Oh man, I don't know. I really loved Subnautica, so this is working on the follow-up is kind of like a dream project. I'm pretty happy about that. How did you make the retro bleepy sounds for FTL? I used software instruments for that. Specifically, I used Reactor at the time. I don't really use it anymore, but that was what I used then. Nothing fancy, it's just basic synthesizer waveforms. And we're going to work with those in a bit later, which is going to be great. Oh, thanks, Castellum. Are you local to the game dev scene in Sacramento? Yes, I am. I recently moved to Sacramento almost 2 years ago. And I love it here. I moved here from the Bay Area. And I'm super happy about it. I love living here. And yeah, I want to get more involved in the local scene. And this is one way I can do it, which is great. Okay, we got a nice in-depth question here. In the art world, we sometimes have an art style guide which denotes both technical and artistic aspects from software and workflow to the use of color and what pieces should look like. Have you ever been given a sound style guide? If not, do you think one might be more helpful, and what do you think one might include? Oh, that's a really cool idea. Yeah, not really. The projects I work on are small enough that no one's ever really, like, made a guide or anything for me to follow. I usually go over the art guides, though, to get an idea of what kind of vibe they're going for. But yeah, no one's ever written a music style guide. Usually it's like that happens through discussions with the developer. We sort of determine, like, we often come up with, like, adjectives that will match the vibe that we're going for, and then we'll trade, like, tracks, like music tracks from other media or like from albums or whatever, and we will share those, and that will be sort of like, that will sort of become the style guide, but it's always really informal. Lorcan's ask, are you interested in marine life? Oh yeah, well, one of the plushies is an octopus, and that came from a donation. The other one is a plushie from Into the Breach, which you can get on Fangamer right now. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested in marine life. I love, like, the coelacanth, and, like, horseshoe crabs are very cool. Jellyfish. I love going to aquariums. And I love Subnautica, so it all kind of works out. Okay, so I'm going to start with my career. So first I want to, like, the first thing I want to cover is like debunking some myths. Yeah, Dunkleosteus is awesome too. Yes, I love that fish. That is an awesome fish. It has an armored face. I'm getting distracted. So I'm gonna start on the career stuff, and I'm gonna debunk some myths. So like, a lot of people picture, when they picture like a musician who's a career musician, they picture someone who was like a musical prodigy as a kid and went to like a prestigious music school and they can play like 10 different instruments. That's not me at all. And I did not go to a music school, and I never showed any particular skill for music when I was a kid. In fact, I played trumpet in the high school band, and I was so bad at it that I actually like failed band class, which is not something you think you could do, but I managed to do it. That's how bad I was. So my point is that like, you don't have to be like a musical genius in order to succeed as a musician. And like, I am the best example of that. And I'm 36, and I didn't have like my first hit and like was able to do this full time until I was 29. So I was almost 30. That's when FTL exploded in popularity, and suddenly I could do this full time. And that also tells you like, I finished school in 2003, and it took me like almost 10 years to go from finishing school to having a career in music. In between that time, I did a lot of practice and a lot of work and a lot of different jobs to support myself. And sort of taught myself a lot of things. I did a 2-year program in school for... Here, let's switch up the music. It's repeating, huh? So like, what was I saying? Yeah, I finished school in 2003. It was for audio engineering, which was basically like recording bands, and that was really useful, but it wasn't really like a music school, and it was more like a community college. And then I worked a whole bunch of different jobs, and was mostly broke most of that time, until FTL happened. And I worked on a bunch of games that never went anywhere or didn't get released. And so my point is, it's not necessarily like music prodigy, prestigious music school, and then first game, which is a big hit, and then you're a big success. The path to success is often going to be long and weird, and not going to follow not going to follow some script. Here's a question. What digital audio workstations did you evolve through? That's an interesting question. My first one was a program called Acid, made by Sonic Foundry. I don't think Sonic Foundry exists anymore. I think Acid might exist. But yeah, it was my first one, and this is so long ago that I ordered it from a paper catalog. That's like how long that was. And that was my first one. I used it for a few years until I got Cubase in like 2005, maybe. I can't remember. And I've been using Cubase ever since, although I do use Ableton for live stuff. So a lot of people ask me about how I ended up with FTL, because FTL was such a big success. And so I'll tell you a little bit about that. At the time, before FTL came out, like 2010, 2011, I was working on Gravity Ghost, which is another game that another indie game that's out with my music. Working on Gravity Ghost and some other little projects, and a friend of mine came over one day. He was a friend from a former job, and he said, my friend is working on this little space game. He's like a friend of mine from college. He's working on this space game, and I know that you are doing music and you were looking for music jobs, and he needs music, so I thought maybe you could connect. He's making this space game, do you want to check it out? And I was like, alright. And we played it that day, because he brought it over on like a little USB stick, an early version of it. And I was like, hell yes, I want to make music for this game. This looks awesome. And the developers asked me to do, they were like, okay, you want to make music for this? Make something that sounds like this stuff, and they gave me some guidelines. And I spent that weekend making this like perspective demo to impress them. And that demo eventually became the title music for FTL, the Space Cruise. And they were into it, and so that's sort of how I got attached to that. We did not think that FTL was going to be like a huge hit. We thought it was going to be a very obscure, weird little roguelike. Because roguelikes weren't a huge thing at that time. But yeah, we did a Kickstarter, and it was kind of like a huge hit on Kickstarter. And even then, we still didn't really understand the scope of it. We thought maybe the Kickstarter audience was like the entire audience, and there wasn't going to be anyone else interested in it after that. But, you know, that turned out to be wrong too. And yeah, so that's sort of how it happened. It was all about the takeaway I try to give people is like, that was about networking and being ready. Those are the two key things to remember. And like, so like, I told everyone I knew that I was making music for games. And so when my friend knew somebody, I had an old friend who was making a game, he was like, oh, I'll connect Ben with this guy. And that was a benefit of telling everybody. And then second thing is being ready. I was already had like almost 10 years of experience writing music by the time FTL came around, and I had already written a ton of music by then. And so like when they came along and were like, make a perspective demo for us, I was able to just like start immediately that weekend and have something ready in a few days. And if I was just starting out or just like barely able to make anything, I wouldn't have been able to like have something ready by then. And so those are the two key things that I always try to tell people when I'm like, okay, the biggest component was obviously luck. I just got really lucky with FTL. And that's not necessarily helpful to everybody. But that's the key things to remember are being ready and telling everybody you know that what you're doing. All right, let me answer some questions here. What did audio engineering teach you that you used to compose? I think I knew some other artists, e.g. Laser Hawk, who did something similar in school and make great music. It was mostly what I learned was like recording and mixing. The recording stuff I don't necessarily use all the time because I do everything electronically. But mixing and mastering definitely has been useful. I use that literally every day. So that was good. Everything else I had to teach myself, like music theory and playing piano and playing guitar. Neither of which I'm all that good with. I couldn't play like a live show with those instruments. Another question: what are you doing at the moment? At the moment, I'm working on the soundtrack for Subnautica Below Zero, which I believe you can hear the music for right now. Yeah, I've got this is a track from the game. Spoiler alert. We got another question. What kinds of projects would you recommend for composers trying to get more experience? I would say game jams. Join up with other like-minded people and do game jams. That can get you... That's like... that's way better experience and exposure than, like, working for exposure, right? Like, at least with a game jam title, you're all colleagues. And you're all, like, equally invested. So yeah, I would say do game jams and just keep making lots of stuff. Excuse me. Yeah, the FTL music does, like... we got a few questions here about the FTL music. And if, in case you're not familiar with it, each track in FTL has two versions, an explore and a battle version. And they follow the same cues, except the battle version usually has more added to it. And usually it's usually like percussion is added and then some other instruments. Maybe a bass line or some more like edgier, heavier synths or something. Yeah, let's play some more music over here. There we go. Why is that so loud? Oh, I forgot to mute something. Sorry about that. So where was I? Oh yeah, so there were two states in FTL, and it was you were either exploring or you were fighting other enemies, and that was essentially the two parts of the game. And so it's very easy to come up with like a musical idea of like just switching between a calmer version of the music and then a more intense version. We got a question about it. Did you compose the peaceful sector themes before the battle themes, or vice versa? I always composed the peaceful exploration music first, and then added to the battle stuff. Another question. I was going to ask if you send off material to an external person to mix it, or if you mix everything on your own. Also, is there a significant difference in mixing music for games versus mixing for an album? So, answer the first question, I generally do all my mixing myself. Although, I do send it to the developers and they put it in the game and they'll do mixing on the game side. Using like Fmod or whatever to mix it with the sound effects. I don't think there's a whole lot that they do other than levels. And then the second question, is there a significant difference in mixing music for games versus mixing for an album? There can be. I usually don't worry about it too much and instead like change the mix based on like volume levels, basically keeping the music a little quieter to not interfere with the sound effects. But you can like mix for a game and like leave room for sound effects, but it's just kind of hard to know what sound effects are going to play at any given time. Another question: do you have a standard process or flow for writing, composing, sound design, structure, or do you just jump around from thing to thing as you feel it's important? I kind of jump around a lot. It depends entirely on my mood. Another question. We have a game jam exercise coming up this Sunday. It's about changing rules. Would that be something you think you can incorporate music-based rules for an exercise like that? Probably. It would depend on the game, I guess, but I can imagine you can do some kind of musical thing. I worked on a game called All Walls Must Fall, and it was a rhythm-based, turn-based strategy game, a little bit like XCOM, but with like time travel and it was kind of bonkers. It was very cool, and I did like a full fully interactive soundtrack full with a bunch of different layers and everything. And so yeah, you can definitely do like interactive music that follows a lot of different logic. Next question here. Sorry, a lot of talking. What type of feedback are you looking for when you show your track to other devs? Interesting. You know, I'm not sure what I'm looking for specifically. Usually it's just like if it matches the vibe that they're going for. That's usually the feedback that I want. Do you do sound design and music or just music? I do just music now, although I did used to do sound effects. I did the sound effects for FTL and Gravity Ghost. And it was pretty fun, but I don't really like doing sound effects, so I don't really offer it anymore. Sorry about the Moobot. Moobot's a little broken, and I haven't fixed it. But yeah, it's just gonna ban you if you post links, and I'm sorry about that. Robbitmoo asks, how much have you spent on plugins? Oh man, I don't even know. I have spent the vast majority of my spending money for soundtrack stuff has definitely been on plugins and VSTs, software instruments. So yeah, I don't even know how much. I haven't really like kept track. Oh, here's a good question. If you're asked to make a track that wasn't in your skill set, how do you make up for your lack? Say you do a lot of guitar, piano, but they want brass and funk. Usually people don't choose me to do something that's outside of my like wheelhouse. I've had to do occasional things outside of my usual style, but I don't. I usually just try to work with what I have and what I can do, and try to incorporate that into like use stuff that I can do in new ways. But yeah, usually no one's going to like hire me to do like a jazz soundtrack, so. To some extent, I don't have to worry too much about being like completely blindsided by a genre or style. What are some unique or interesting choices you've noticed in compositions outside of game audio, like unique instrumentation or creative elements in movie or TV, anime soundtracks? I don't know if I can think of anything off the top of my head, but one of my favorite soundtracks is Man from U.N.C.L.E. I know it's like not the most popular or famous movie. Most people haven't seen it, I think, but it has an amazing soundtrack. Greatest music inspiration. I don't know. I don't know if I have a single greatest music inspiration. That's really hard to answer. I listen to a lot of stuff. Are you using hardware instruments in your compositions, modular synths, for instance? I do occasionally, but not a lot. Most of the stuff that I do is with software. I did just get this Volca drum machine, and I love it. It's really fun. But yeah, I'm mostly like software. How did you find your style, and when did you know? Your style just sort of happens. You don't really get to, you don't really find it so much as it just is you. And I don't know if you ever really know if you found your style, because it's just whatever you make. And sometimes you can't even really see your own style. To you, it's just you're making your thing. But, you know, to everyone else it's your style, but you have no idea what it is. Favorite MIDI controller? The one that I'm using, I guess, which is it's nothing fancy. It's a Nectar Impact GX48, but it's not just a keyboard. Was it hard to get started professionally? Did you struggle financially? Yes, it was very hard, and it took me about 10 years. So, yeah. What about weirdest source of inspiration? Weirdest source? I don't know. I guess I'll have to think about that one. I'll keep that in mind. When hiring, how can we identify a really good sound artist? Well, a good one will ask for pay, and they won't work for free. Keep that in mind, aspiring musicians. I'd say listen to their music and see how well they communicate. Talk to them over like video chat or something, and see how well they can speak to you and express themselves. This is a good question. Do you like your music? Yeah, I think it's pretty decent. I don't hate my music. I mean, I did spend about a good decade actually hating my music, but you know, I got better. Favorite game growing up? I mean, I had a lot of favorites. I loved on PC. I loved Daggerfall, which is an early Elder Scrolls game. And I also loved like Ocarina of Time and Final Fantasy VII. You know, a lot of the classics. I loved TIE Fighter on PC, the Star Wars game. I played a lot of different things. What's your favorite anime soundtrack? I hate to say this, but I don't actually watch a lot of anime. I'm sorry. It's not like a conscious decision. I just don't have a lot of friends who watch anime, and so I don't really have anyone to introduce me to stuff. Yay, fellow weebs. Yeah, sorry, I just watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is not really anime, but it is a Korean animation studio, so kinda counts. And it has amazing music. But yeah, I just haven't watched a lot, sorry. But yeah, plenty of time to fix it now. Another question. Oh, good, novice questions. I like these. Total novice question, but if you use physical instruments, how do you record? Like a guitar, for instance, do you just play into the mic, or do you have a cord that you run from the guitar to the mixer? It depends. In Into the Breach, I used 2 different guitars. I had an electric, which I have here with me, and that I plugged directly into my audio device. But I also did a couple of tracks with acoustic guitar, and that I set up a microphone and record into that. So yeah, it depends on what you have. Like an acoustic guitar, you need a microphone. Well, not necessarily. I guess some of them have like direct outputs built into them, but most of the time you're going to be recording that microphone. This is a good question. Do you listen to your own music, and do you grow sick of it somehow as you have to listen to it a lot while making it? I get sick of it while I'm making it, and then once like a soundtrack is done, I generally don't listen to it at all for like a few months, and then when I go back and listen to it again, it's like a new thing, and I'm like, oh wow, it's like a different person made it. So, you know, it works out. What's the type of music you'd like to make for a game but haven't had the chance to yet? I'd really love to do something really story heavy, like very character focused. I do a lot of like games that are about systems, and I would love to do something that's like more story focused. I also really want to do more horror. Like I really want to do more horror games. I did a couple of them in the form of Dead Secret and Dead Secret Circle, and that was really fun, and I'd love to do more. Another question. What kind of soft skills have you had to learn coming into and thriving in the games industry? Soft skills, running my own business, finance, communication skills is a big one. Learning to communicate with others, learning to work at home. I work from home, which means my job isn't really affected too much by the lockdown. But yeah, you have to learn to like work from home and be your own boss and stay organized, even when you don't have someone who's like right there telling you what to do or keeping you like in line and checking in on you. Like when you're freelance and you're a contractor and you work elsewhere, generally people just aren't going to check up on you, and they're just going to trust you to get things done. And so you need to learn to check up on yourself. And I have this like, I have notebook here, and this I call this my boss. It's my bullet journal, and I write a whole bunch of stuff in it every day and keep track of everything that I've done, and that's how I sort of make sure I get stuff done every day. And that's like the biggest soft skill I think that you need to learn if you're working for yourself. Silly question. How do you cope with not being able to listen to music while you work? Geez, you know, I don't like it. It does bother me. I look forward to days when I can do stuff like emails or whatever, when I can actually listen to music while I do it. But yeah, it's tough not being able to listen to music while you work. Another good question. How do you manage working from home and still being productive? Do you have separate work and play areas, or have like Ben's work time scheduled? I don't schedule too hard, but I do have a separate room. This is my studio room. And this is where I get all my work done. And so it is nice when I'm done, I can just like leave this room, and that's like I'm done with work. It's like a separate area for it, and that helps a lot. But I'm really privileged in that. Like I can afford to have a separate room in my home. But that's not really like, not everyone gets that kind of chance. So, but if you can keep your workspace separate from everything else, it's super useful to have. What are your top 5 VSTs? My top one, I do have complete. I think it's complete 10. I use Omnisphere a lot. We're gonna talk about Omnisphere, and I really like Valhalla Room, which is a reverb plugin. And that's all I'm gonna cover right at the moment. Another question: what is your favorite Super NES game and soundtrack? I think my favorite one is probably Super Metroid? Maybe? I really liked Chrono Trigger when I was growing up, but I can't really play it anymore as much. I just don't have the patience for it. But I would say my favorite game soundtrack from the Super NES era is definitely Chrono Trigger. To piggyback off the work from home question, do you live alone or with people? If you live with people, how do you manage to work the work from home aspect with others around? I do live with others, and having a separate room is very helpful in that sense. I can just go into my room and into my little studio room and not have to worry about other people around. Although I still have to worry about the cats. I don't know if they're right here right now, but I guess not. I have a little bed for them on the desk. What workstation are you using? I'm using Cubase, and you'll get to see it in like 15 minutes. Another question. You said you'd like to do a story-heavy game. Why? What is it that you like about that from a sound design perspective? It's just that it's a game that I'd like to do, and like I love the work that I've done, but I'd really like to do more like emotionally driven music, I guess. Like music driven more by human emotion than by atmosphere, if that makes sense. Everything I do now is like atmosphere driven, which is fine. I still really enjoy it, but yeah, that sounds like an interesting challenge. I'd love to make like music attached to characters, and it's just a very different style than what I've been doing. I guess the closest thing I've done is Photographs, which is my last game that I release. Have you ever made music that borderline infringed copyright? I don't think so. I try really hard to not do that. Hopefully not. I hopefully have not infringed anyone's copyright. As a composer, what are some shining examples of what made you enjoy working with a dev team over the years? I like dev teams that let me do what I want. That's the most obvious one. When they're like, we like your style, so you do you. And that's really fun. I like being trusted with when I have like kind of out there ideas for instrumentation. Oftentimes I'll suggest a style or like an instrument or something, and developers will be like, that sounds weird, I don't think we want to do that. And I like it when developers are like, okay, that sounds weird, but you should try it and see how it goes. And I usually fix that problem by just making a thing and sending it to the developers without asking about it, and just like, here's my idea for this thing, and then they'll hear it without me having to tell them about it first, and it works out. I like developers that respect my need to get paid for my work. I know that sounds kind of mercenary, but this is my job, and all of my income comes from making music. And if a developer is cagey about payment, or like doesn't respect artists being paid for their work or being compensated for their work, that's something that I don't usually like. What's a really terrible game you've played but it has a great track or soundtrack? Man, I wish I had a good answer for that, like right off the top of my head. That's a fun question. Ah, man, I'll have to think about it. I can't think of anything right at the moment. This is a very broad question. How can we use sound and music to tell a story? But I'll at least say a couple of little things. Recurring themes and motifs and recurring instruments are a great way to like strengthen the storytelling in other parts of the game. You can associate a certain instrument with a character, and then different scenes that a character might have, you use the same instrument for that. For example, that's like a really basic example. That's like how you can use like music to help tell a story. This is a good question. When creating video game soundtracks, did you pay special attention to how quickly the average player would get bored of a certain track? Like battle music, that happens a lot. Because personally, I can listen to... Oh, thanks. Thank you, without getting bored. Yes, I do think about how often a track is being played. I always thought it was weird that JRPGs would have, like Final Fantasy has like 4 discs worth of music. It's like 4 hours of music, but only 1 battle track. So it's like, you wrote 4 hours of music, but you're only using 3 minutes of that 4 hours for a thing that people are going to hear for half of your game. It seems like a weird choice. I never understood it. So yeah, when I'm writing, I try to think about where is the player spending the most time, and that wherever they're spending the most time, that needs a lot more variety than other parts of the game. So yeah, it is something that I'm thinking about a lot. Another question: when is music started in the development of a game? It's usually started a little later. I usually join the team somewhere between 6 months and 1 year after the game has started development at all, and I don't mind that at all. I like having art and things and like the game stuff already in place, and then I can kind of use that to inspire my music. Another good question. Without actually asking about prices, do you have any advice on determining your own rates? Yes, I do, actually. Pick up the book, The Complete Guide to Game Audio by Aaron Marks. Get that book, because it tells you how to calculate your own rates in a very detailed way. So get that book. It will teach you everything you need to know about setting your rates. Since you seem to like sci-fi games and games with depth to their story, what's your favorite track from Halo and/or Mass Effect? It's weird, I wasn't that into the music from Mass Effect. I can't really remember anything other than the cool map screen music that everyone loves from Mass Effect. Halo has great music though. The title music, that like Halo theme is fantastic. Hey, time traveler. Yeah, if you missed anything, this thing is saved, so you can go back and listen to all this stuff. So I covered a lot of what I was going to talk about in the questions, so that's kind of good. You all asked fantastic questions. And you know, feel free, keep them coming. I don't mind. If you would like, we can move on to the making the sort of the music workshop part of this, where I'll make some music and we'll talk about it. Oh, I can also talk about like a beginner studio too. We'll get to that next. What goes into making you think a piece of music is good or bad in your eyes? I don't know if I can really... I don't know if I'm skilled enough to answer that. Who would you consider the Bach or Mozart of game music? I don't know enough about either Bach or Mozart to answer that well, so not sure. Hey, you're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed the soundtrack. And thanks to everybody who said something nice about my work. I do appreciate it. Has anyone ever approached you for a project that you felt uncomfortable with, like an NSFW game? How would you deal with this? I've been approached on a couple of games that I was like not comfortable with. One was a guy, the guy, I just got a really bad vibe from him, and it was clear that... It seemed clear to me that he was like, this guy was only interested in exploiting others' work, and I just got the worst vibe from him, and so I just didn't do the project, even though it was like a paid thing. Yeah, I've had a couple of other things where it's like, the content in the game, not necessarily like it was really out there or anything, but it was just like things that seemed like maybe appropriative or just not something I wanted to be a part of. Usually I'm just like polite, thanks but no thanks. That's usually how I deal with stuff. Legendary status genius composers of game audio. I'm always a little wary of like attaching the genius title to anybody. But I mean, there are a lot of great composers out there. I particularly like Mitsuda, the composer for Chrono Trigger. Great musician and a great style and really great understanding of how music tells a story. What other composers do you feel influence your music? So, one of the biggest influences directly, like, on me as a composer was Hesper Kid. He did music for some of the early Assassin's Creed games and like Hitman and MDK2. And when I was a teenager, I loved his stuff, and he was the one who convinced me to use Cubase because he used it. I was like, well, if he's using it, I should use it, and that's why I use Cubase. And now I just keep using it because I'm really good at it. But I started using it because like he did, and he was like a big influence on my style. I'm not even really sure what he's been up to lately. I don't even really know. I haven't really kept up with it as as the years went on. But at the time, he was a big deal to me. Have you ever been approached by artists to make non-game music, like electronic musician or whatever, wanting to make an album, tracks, or vocal-based stuff? I mean, I did music for a documentary. That was not video game related. And I also do music for my own albums. What kind of music bands do you like outside of the video game music world? I love Queen. They're one of my favorite bands. The stuff that I'm really into lately is like St. Lucia. I don't know if anyone's heard of St. Lucia, but I love that band. And I went to one of their live shows relatively recently, and it was great. St. Lucia and now nothing's coming to mind at the moment. Very hard to recall stuff when I'm also trying to answer questions. We'll just stick with that. St. Lucia. Favorite Queen album is definitely. I guess I'm like a real really basic when it comes to Queen, but Night at the Opera is my favorite Queen album. Have you ever tried writing a piece with just a piano sound, no bells, bass, synth sounds? I did a long time ago, but I'm not exactly a great piano player, so it always ends up sounding not great to me. Alright, last question, and then I'm going to move on to the workshop part of this. Do you have any advice about the business side of running a business? More specifically, when do we need to become an LLC or otherwise incorporate? I think you can get away with being a sole proprietor for quite a while. If you start making a lot of money, that might be a good time to start looking into being an LLC. I'm still a sole proprietorship, but I probably shouldn't be. Like, that's not the advice I would give to people. But my plan is to start the process for becoming an LLC. Alright, so let's make some music. I'll still be talking and answering questions, so, you know, feel free to ask stuff. Alright. Stop this. Don't need these anymore. Alright, put on the headphones. So yeah, I do all my writing, music writing in Cubase, which is this. This is what you're seeing right now. Oh, another good question. Were you asked to mimic Subnautica's music for Below Zero? If so, does that happen often, and do you find it challenging? Well, Subnautica is the first time where I'm following up something that already exists. Everything else I've worked on is like a new thing. So I'd never had to like mimic a style before. But the developers of Subnautica, they mostly just told me to do. They were like, you know, use the original game soundtrack as inspiration, but don't feel like you have to mimic the original, which has been nice. And in a couple of cases, I have tried to like make something in the style of the original game, but most of the time I'm just doing my own thing, and it's really fun. Okay, so I made this little thing here. Let me open this up here. At the top of the screen, you have tracks, and each one of these. Well, there's only one right now, but this is like a track representing an instrument that will play sounds when this line moves to the right. See, if I move it over here and I hit play, this thing will move to the right, and it will play whatever is in each track at that point. So I made this thing. It's not going to sound great in the beginning, and the whole point of this workshop is like we're going to make this one little arpeggiated melody sound good. So this and this here and here are the same thing. So this is kind of like a zoomed in view of this thing that I've selected here. And this other thing is just a repeat of the same. It's just repeating twice. And if we want to look at the instrument that's actually playing this, I hit a button, and after a few seconds, Omnisphere pops up. And Omnisphere is like a synthesizer sampler thing that I use all the time. I use it in everything these days. I did not have it when I made FTL, but I wish I did, because it's fantastic. This is the interface for Omnisphere, and this is where I edit the sound of the instrument itself. But first, let's go back to this. And I'm going to hit play, and you'll hear this really basic little synth arpeggio here. Hopefully everything's set up so that it actually works. And it doesn't. Hang on. Something's wrong. Well, let me make a new instrument doing the same thing, I guess. Give me a moment. Okay, I'm gonna quit Cubase because it's clearly not working. Give me just a moment here. I'll keep answering questions. We got, how deep into synthesis do you get? Do you mostly just pull presets and do tweaks to them, or do you, like, build patches from scratch often? So, that's a good question. I used to mostly just do presets, but these days I am very often building stuff from scratch, and that's what we're going to do today. Assuming I can get this working. And that's one of the things that I love about Omnisphere is I can build stuff from scratch really quickly. It's such a great interface. Yeah, this is pretty normal for my live streams. If there isn't a technical issue, then clearly I'm doing something wrong. This is how I set up the capturing for OBS. Another question, do you work with monitor headphones or monitor speakers? Both, and I try to switch back and forth between them a lot. How long have you streamed for? Maybe 5 years now? Not like constantly not like every week for 5 years, but yeah, I've been doing like different streaming things. I do like a marathon every October for charity, and like I've been doing these like music workbench streams for a couple of years now. All right, let's see if this works. Hey, there we go. So there you go. There's this really boring sine wave thing. Sounds pretty bad, right? Oh, here we go. Yeah, this was a question I forgot. It was very early. How important do you feel it is to be genre flexible? How much of an emphasis on a particular genre do you usually get from a client? Or do they say do as you will more often? I do get the do as you will more often, but it is the more genres you can do, the better, essentially. But it's more important to just be good at anything. Than it is to be like have a wide variety of genres. I don't think anyone can really do every genre like great. So, just especially early on, just focus on making anything that sounds really, really good. And then from there, think about branching out to other genres. Okay, so this sounds pretty lame, right? I have it set to repeat. It's just going to keep going. But we're going to make it sound cool. So first of all, we're going to change how each note is played with the envelope. Oh, you can't play. That's right. Sorry. My bad. There we go. So yeah. Let's combine these two so you can just see the whole thing. So now it's playing these notes, and it's just repeating it. It sounds really boring. Let's see what we can do to make it sound more interesting. We're gonna change the envelope here. I'll try to make sure that my face isn't covering anything. So one thing we can do is just like now it decays and like it's almost like a bell sound, and that sounds a little better. One thing I like to do with like a basic synth sound, so this is just a basic sine wave. It's just playing a sine wave to those notes. So one thing I like to do is add harmonies, and like Omnisphere lets you add like the same sound but like at different pitches. So like I can turn on this harmonia thing. Now it's playing a note at 1 octave up, and then I can play another note at the same note, and then another note 1 octave down, and then we'll just throw in a 4th note for the good measure. And then maybe like pan it. Here we can put them left and right. That's kind of cool. Another thing that this is going to make it start to sound like FTL really fast, and this is like sort of anyone who's watched my live streams knows what I'm about to do here. We're going to add a delay to this, and this is going to change it very like by a lot. Okay, it sounds weird. So we change it to like dotted 8th note delay, and this adds like an echo to it. Turn down the feedback here, and then. Now listen to this. I'm also gonna turn the EQ down a little bit. That lower part's was a little too loud. Now it sounds pretty cool, right? And then, like, why stop there? What other waveforms can we play with? This one has a whole bunch of different shaped waveforms that you can play with. And I like to look through their retro waveforms. I don't really know what makes something retro or not, but you can take a listen to, like, all sorts of different sounds. That's pretty cool. I like that one a lot. That's a nice smooth sound. Oh, we got a question here, and I'm sorry I missed it. Hang on. Let me stop that. Are there any open source applications you've tested, used for music production development, which you would recommend? Or is there no way around commercial or proprietary tools? Yeah, I haven't really used a lot of like free or open source applications for music production. Usually, just the impression I always get is that they're just not. They don't have the same quality. Music production is like a difficult thing, and usually requires like a dedicated full-time team to make tools that really work very well. All right, so we got our cool sound here. We took that really basic thing and made it into something neat. You know what else I'm going to do to make sure that it doesn't overload is I'm going to put a compressor on it. The compressor makes sure, basically it makes sure that no part of it gets too loud. It will like push it down. Yeah, the point of an LLC, a limited liability company, is to make your business separate identity from yourself, and that's useful in like a legal sense. I have not used Bossa Coil. I have no idea how to pronounce that, but I have not used it. different sounds. We can turn off that harmony too and just have like the original. That's kind of cool. The other thing we can do is we can add like changes over time, like what they call LFOs, but I like to call animators. You can animate the sound. Like we can use these controls to change the shape of the waveform in real time. The EQ here, this is part of Cubase, and EQ is one of the most useful tools that you'll ever have when making music electronically. This is every frequency that the sound is playing, and then you can turn those frequencies up or down with EQing. Like I can cut out the around 200 hertz. Like, now it's gone. Or like, I can turn up the 5,000 hertz. Or we can sweep it across and you can get an even better idea. You can turn it down and you can hear it being... Anyway, this is a really useful way of like mixing, and I often turn synthesizers down around the 200 hertz mark because a lot of synths tend to push that range a lot. Okay, we got a bunch of questions here, so I'm gonna pause here and answer a bunch of these here. How often do you go into a new track knowing what sounds you want? How often do you just mess around and try something that works? I do both of those things, so I don't know if I do one more often than the other. I'm not really sure. Next question. Is the music in a game composed into MP3 quality? I'm not actually sure. That's a lot on the implementation side, which I'm not as involved in. These days, most of the games I've worked on use Fmod, and the Fmod has its own kind of compression, but I don't actually know what it does. Like how it compresses, I'm not really sure. It definitely compresses. Another question. How would you recommend somebody get started with music production? I'm always so overwhelmed by real DAWs that I get distracted and then discouraged. Man, I get this question all the time, and I wish I had a great answer for it. It's frustrating because, like, if you want to get into game development, there's stuff like Game Maker, which is like a beginner-focused tool that is also very powerful. But I feel like there's not really any equivalent for, like, music production in a studio setting, or, like, electronic music. There's no easy way to, like, just start. Maybe GarageBand if you've got a Mac, but not everyone has a Mac, so that's like a huge caveat. So yeah, they're really hard to learn. I wish there was a nice basic beginner version, like a beginner workstation out there that I could recommend, but I don't know of any. As soon as I find one, that's the one I'm going to recommend, because that's maybe the question I get the most often is like, how do I start? But you start with a workstation. A lot of these have either $100 versions or free versions. The two I've used are Cubase and Ableton. I like them both. They're great. I don't have any opinion on any of the others out there because I've never used them. So I couldn't tell you if they're great or terrible. I have no opinion. But they all kind of do the same thing. And unfortunately, yeah, you just kind of have to, like, get in there and learn how they work very slowly. YouTube is your best friend in that sense. Find beginner tutorials on whatever your workstation is. Go from there. Another question: how do you do arrangement in electronic music for games, since there's no like intro, verse, chorus, bridge, etc. arrangement you can do? I mean, you can do that. There's nothing saying you can't do something equivalent. Arrangement is something that's very fluid for me. I may arrange stuff different ways every time. Hi, Rofflo Bear. And I'll have to check that. I'm gonna write that one down. The Bossa coil. I have no idea how that's pronounced, but that sounds cool. Tiny workstation with retro electronic instruments sounds like my kind of thing. So I will be checking that out later. Do you use an MB compressor on every channel, or did you hear something that caused you to use an MB compressor on this sound? I don't use it on every channel. It just depends on what I'm doing. I did it for this because a lot of times raw synthesizer sounds can be like just too loud in a lot of places, so a compressor is often a good idea, but not always. Somebody asked me about program. I feel like somebody asked about programming earlier, and I forgot to learn it. I forgot to answer it. I used to do programming when I was a kid. I was definitely making games before I was making music, and I did a lot of programming in like BASIC, but I don't really do a lot of programming now. Another question: are there any synthesizers or VSTs you would recommend that cost something slightly less than $500 for if you're starting out? I would say Complete. So you may have heard of Native Instruments Complete, and they have a free version of Complete now, and it has a bunch of cool stuff included in it. So if you're just starting out with software instruments and you've got your audio workstation, go to Native Instruments Complete. It's spelled with a K, spelled like this. Native Instruments Complete. And that's free. And I forget what the free version is called, but you'll find it if you search for it and look through their site. That is an amazing bunch of instruments. It's totally worth it. Yeah, I would say go with that. Other things that are under 500, I'm not really sure. I'd have to do some research, but yeah, start with that. If you're into hardware, but you don't have a lot of money to spend on things, these Volca, these Korg Volca series are fantastic. They do a lot of cool stuff, and each one is $150, I think, and they are like full featured synths and drum machines, and then you can get a bunch of cool hardware for relatively cheap. Still $150, which is not cheap. Complete start. Thank you, Sleffy. All right, so let's keep going with this sound because we've got half an hour left here. So we can add something else. We can like add another instrument to this. Try Omnisphere again. Let's make a different kind of instrument with this. Uh-oh. I think I have something wrong with my keyboard. We might have to just draw notes on the grid instead of playing the keyboard, because I don't know why, but it's not working right now. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, the keyboard. Something's wrong with my keyboard. Maybe I'll unplug it, plug it back in there. Would you say knowing your library is important to being efficient? Yes, you should definitely spend time and learn your library. There we go, got the keyboard working again. Let's turn this down so we can experiment with it without destroying our ears. Okay. So let's try. Okay, so I want to make like a pad that plays under this little arpeggio thing. So we'll start with like a. Go look through those retro things again. Retro waveforms here. I really like this Casio-rama thing. This is cool. But I want to make it like a slow thing, so we're going to give it a slow attack. That's pretty cool, right? And then we'll add those harmonies just like we did for the other thing, although I think we turned that off on the other. We'll do a similar thing here. Turn it on. That sounds pretty cool. We can even do one that's like really high. And then other things we can do is like we can change the waveform again. Something I did recently for this was I had these harmony parts going in and out while it played, which was really neat. I got a bunch of questions here and I'm not answering. Sorry. What is your keyboard? My keyboard is a Nectar Impact GX49. It's very simple. There's nothing exciting about it. I don't really worry about it too much, but it's nice. It's solid and it has a slim form factor, and I like it. Usually have this many tech issues when you're doing your work normally on a day-to-day basis. Today's been more tech issues than normal. I'm not sure why, but there's always something. Another question: have you worked in VR games? I have. Dead Secret and Dead Secret Circle are both VR games, and they're excellent. You should try them out. They're really cool. They're like horror adventure games. How many octaves is your keyboard? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 octaves. How deep into automation do you get? Like automating those octaves and filter sweeps and stuff. I do a lot of automating these days, especially for like 4 below 0. There's a lot of animation and instruments. But yeah, let's try having those different harmony parts move in and out as it plays. That would be really cool. So go to this, and this is our mod matrix, and this is, again, modulation, I feel like is not a great word for it. I usually call it animators if I'm describing it to other people. It's a thing that animates the sound. So we're going to use these LFOs. These are oscillators. They, again, provide animation that we will use to control different things. And in this case, we are going to control the harmony mixes. So harmony level 1, harmony level 2, 3, and harmony level 4. Now, if you look here, you can see the movements. These are the oscillators changing the levels. They already have their speed set up. I can change the speed of this, but we'll just leave it as is. So. Pretty cool. We can just keep adding stuff. We can change the shape. That might be too much. And we can try different instruments. Or different synth sounds. But let's make this even more interesting and add some reverb onto it. My favorite reverb plugin is Valhalla Room. It's not necessary. Most workstations have some built-in reverb that you can play with, but I really like the sound of Valhalla Room, and so that's what we're doing. This is a thing I use a lot in Subnautica right now. Hear that reverb? Very cool. This has some of those higher frequencies are pretty loud, right? So that's when we're gonna bring in a compressor, multi-band compressor. So this listens to it and will turn stuff down if it gets too loud. And I'm just gonna leave it at default settings for now. Yeah, it's very very organ sounding, huh? Change it to a different thing. Pretty cool. We're still gonna do some. We can do some EQing too. So that may not actually end up being appropriate for the other instrument. It's very easy to make an instrument and get so into making it that you forget what you were doing before. Which is sort of what we just did, or what I just did. That doesn't really work. Oh, that's pretty good. My cat is trying to get my attention. She's very upset that I have been doing this instead of paying attention to her. Alright. That sounds pretty cool, so let's repeat this a couple times. I had another thing here, but I guess we don't have time to go over it, so I'll just play with this. Hit record. Oh, and there she is. Hi everybody, say hi to Maddie. She is wonderful and also likes to make trouble. Say hi to everybody, Maddie. Yeah, not talking right now. She's adorable. Are you gonna jump to the desk? Hey, not bad. She has a little bed that's behind the monitor, so that's where she's going right now. And her tail is covering the chat, so I can't say. Can't see the chat. So I'm not really sure if this pad's really gonna work for this. Might need something more airy sounding than these synths. Oh right, face cam. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know, but maybe it's too deep. So one fun thing we can just do to experiment is, whoops, didn't mean to do that. So many buttons. All right, so we can take the whole thing and we can just move it up an octave. Boom, up 1 octave. See how that sounds. It's a little too early. Yeah, I don't know. Not liking it. So I'm just going to mute it for now, and we'll come back to it later. Let's try something else. Another question here. Do you think that you would be able to make a full orchestra-style piece with only computerized instruments? Yes. If so, have you ever written an orchestra piece and was it hard? I have, and it is very hard. It's learning to do like an orchestra digitally is pretty much its own entire field of like study. So I'm not particularly good at it. I would need a lot of practice, and I haven't made that many. Like orchestra pieces. Would you recommend making a full game with an orchestrated soundtrack if you're the only one working on it? Well, here's a fun little fact. The Skyrim soundtrack is all done digitally, sort of. Obviously, the vocal parts are real. And someone originally played those instruments, but as far as I know, he did that all entirely like on his computer. But I think he made the sample libraries himself by recording an orchestra. But yeah, yeah, you can do it. It's very hard and it's very expensive. But yeah, there's a lot of soundtracks. Like I think I never really seen Game of Thrones, but I remember watching the opening sequence and like the title music for it, and I'm pretty sure that was all done digitally, like with a library as well. So if it's done really well, you can't tell. But it's also like for like mid-range projects, it's not that big of an ask if you have a budget to just actually record a full orchestra. Like if you already have money for your project, then it's apparently not that difficult to like hire an orchestra to play, like sight read your stuff. But anyway, I don't know a whole lot about it because I'm pure digital guy. I just do everything on a computer and record stuff myself. So I'm no expert. Austin Wintory would be the one to talk to about that. Let's load up another Omnisphere thing. Another thing you can do is like we can take the same part and play it on a new instrument. And that can be fun. Turn this down. We're going to add that reverb. Just setting stuff up here. Now, we'll start this over again. Oh, can't hear it. Oh, that's kind of cool. Alright, get some more questions. Sorry about the link stuff. Moobot's really strict about that, and I just haven't fixed it in a long time. We got, have you ever gotten comments that your work sounds like it's from Stranger Things? Kind of annoying that I use vastly different synth sounds. Well, here's the thing. Well, most people don't know a lot about how music is made, and they don't have a huge vocabulary for music, and everybody has watched Stranger Things. And for the next 10 years or so, people are going to associate raw synthesizer sounds with Stranger Things, whether you like it or not. And it's kind of something you're going to be stuck with. It's just, I've gotten it too. Luckily, I was making music before Stranger Things existed, so I didn't always have it. But yeah, it's just you're just gonna have to deal with it. Like people are gonna say it, and it's okay. It's not an insult, even though it's really weird and doesn't really make sense to you. If you got synths in your stuff, people are going to say it sounds like Stranger Things until Stranger Things sort of falls out of popularity, which is not going to be for a while. Another good question here. That sound you made and then muted, do you save it for later? Do you normally sound design while sketching ideas or set aside time to sound design without composing? The sound design and the composing all sort of happens together. It's all sort of one thing. As you can kind of see there, I was making the sound and also playing the instrument, like giving it notes to play. Yeah, I usually save stuff for later because you never know if it's going to become relevant later or it'll fit into a different part. If I really dislike something, I'll just get rid of it. But usually I'll save it for later, and like to save memory, I'll disable the instrument and then go look at it some other time. How many monitors do you have? I have two. I'm looking at one over here that has the chat, and then this one is the one that there's one to my left here that has Cubase open. Oh yeah, Kyle's pointed out I did do a really nice in-depth Twitter thread about my entire studio. Um, I will post it in the Discord, in the event chat Discord, for the SAC Game Developer Collective. You can see it there. I'll post a link to it. So, to avoid confusion, start coloring things. If you're wondering what that sound is, that's Maddie trying to tear up the chair behind me in order to get my attention. And then that's her making sound. I don't know if you can hear that. Just, Maddie wants attention. She's very upset with me right now. I'm sorry, Maddie, but I gotta do this. I usually make a folder and then put the stuff I'm not using in the folder and then close the folder so it disappears. I don't have to worry about it. Oh, you know what? You guys were talking about orchestra stuff. Let's load up an orchestra instrument. I've got some stuff of my own. Usually for sample libraries like that of an orchestra, you use, at least I use, Contact. That's really common. And it comes with a factory library of strings, and also I have the Albion 1 library, which I like a lot, which we'll load that up. Let's load up the strings. This might take a little while because it has to load up a ton of samples. I'm using this Spitfire Albion 1 audio orchestra library, but yeah, there are lots of them. This isn't the only one. I think Maddie gave up. Don't worry, Maddie. I'll play with you a lot after this is over. But yeah, the best advice I can give to people starting out making music and want to get good at it and maybe eventually make music for games or anything, I say spend as much time as possible making stuff. Just like every day, make music, and eventually you'll get good at it. The other thing is like emphasis on new music. Keep making new stuff and don't worry about it being polished right now in the beginning. You'll worry about polish when you've made like 50 pieces or something. But in the beginning, make a thing, finish it as quickly as possible, move on to another thing. And don't get hung up on making the perfect piece, or you will just never get anything done. Another question: Do you use a solid state drive or a hard disk drive for your library? Right now, I use a hard disk drive, but this computer is getting a little old. I built it in 2013, so I'm hoping once Subnautica is done, I'm gonna build a new machine and it will have solid state drives, so that it'll be a lot faster. All right, so this is the string part here. Sounds really good, right? Kind of quiet here. Let me turn it up. And it really responds to velocity. So if you hit it really, really softly, you'll get soft sounds. But then you can hit really hard and you'll get loud sounds. Whoops. If you hit it really hard, you'll also hit the wrong keys. And then you get different sounds, different styles. It's so fun to play with. I don't know what else you got here. Really fun. But let's just take the here we go. A long note. You can do a lot of stuff with like legato, meaning like it can transition between notes more smoothly. Oh, we've got tremolo. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's very expensive. It's not something you get if you're just doing it as a hobby, unless you're super dedicated. But if you're like a career musician, this thing is really useful and cost effective. Another question. So far, there are 2 channels in this song. How many on average do you have when a song is finished? It's usually somewhere between like 5 and 40. It's kind of a wide range. Another question. What is your opinion on covers and remakes? I guess I don't understand the question. Um, yeah, so all right, see if we can work in these these strings in with the synthesizer stuff. It's a bit non-traditional. Kind of fun. Very different style. What is your opinion on people making covers and remakes to learn their library in different styles? Oh yeah, you should totally do that. Absolutely. Do whatever it takes to learn how to use your stuff. Like you don't have to release it. So yeah, trying to imitate other styles. You will learn a lot just from making someone else's song. Oh, I still have the spiccato or the tremolo, don't I? Let's turn that off. Come on, you can do it. There we go. There we go. I don't work with like orchestra instruments a lot, so I don't know this interface as well as I know like synthesizers and stuff. Um, let's make it a little more epic and put it in the same reverb that we did with the other things. Ruffalo Bear asks, is temp music prevalent in the games industry? Like people using existing songs while developing and expecting you to emulate those songs. I heard this is a big practice in the film industry and can cause scores to sound very similar to existing ones. Yeah, and I saw that video, that really cool video. I think it's called Every Frame a Painting. And they did that sort of like expose on temp music. And that was really cool. Yeah, in games they use temp music too, and sometimes sometimes you're asked to emulate the temp music, but never, at least in my experience, I've never been asked to just like recreate it like just to the edge of copyright infringement. Here we go. Got some strings. I just played that out. You know what? This doesn't have that reverb, so let's add that. Get even higher strings in there. Yeah. Yeah, alright, let's record that. Alright, so I just recorded more string parts on top of what I already did, and I can even like just put this all together, and then you can see it all here. These are all the notes that I played. Twice, though. That's one of the cool things about digital music, is you can just keep recording over stuff and just keep adding things. Oh, cool. Hi from India. Hello. Hi from California. Question. On the EQ, how do you know which frequency to turn down? Well, you listen to it, and you move the thing around until it sounds right. That's sort of... That's the basic answer. But it also just helps to, like, know beforehand, like, what sound you're looking for, or, like, a lot of it is about, like, you pull down the cursor here and move it around until, like, it fits with the other instruments, and it's kind of like a subtle process. It's a lot of, like, it's a lot of finagling to it, and a lot of practice. Good question here. Do you use a general return channel reverb to send each channel, or slap a reverb on each individual channel? Usually just slap a reverb on each individual channel, but that's not really, like, that's how I do it, but that's not really how most engineers or mixer producers would tell you to do it, because it's not very efficient. But that's how I do it usually. If I have a lot of stuff using the same reverb, I often will end up making a separate channel for one reverb and then routing everything through it. But yeah, usually it's not a problem, and not everything uses the same reverb when I'm working on this stuff, so it's just like my style. So that's fun. Let's add some deeper part to it. I'm gonna load up Omnisphere again, and we're gonna make like an arpeggio. Oh, it looks like we've hit our time limit, but I'll do work for a little bit longer here. Oh, that's kind of cool. This thing has an arpeggiator, which is really fun to play with. I don't always use it, but sometimes when I'm trying to come up with ideas, I will mess around with it, or if I want something to sound like a synthesizer. Like that. Okay, we got some questions here. Do you have a standard process or flow for writing, composing, sound design, structure, or do you just jump around from thing to thing as you feel it's important? I do a lot of jumping around. The music writing process is very fluid for me, and it's a lot about like sometimes I'll start with like a chord progression and then work from there. Sometimes I'll just start with the sound that I like, or and then work from that, and then I'll do like mixing on the fly as I'm composing. Everything sort of happens all at once. There's no set process that I have. It's probably the best answer. I mean, it's really subtle and complicated, so I don't really have like a good answer for that. Do you reference your old tracks when mixing or other tracks, or not at all? I do referencing. When I'm mixing or like mastering tracks, I will pull up old tracks of mine and try to match that when I'm mastering, or I'll load up other tracks that aren't made by me to try to like match those volume levels. So here we can use that arpeggio and just draw a single note. This. And it will just play that arpeggio at that note. Oh yeah, it has a different chord, huh? So let's change this to a different note. Goes from a D to a C. Can zoom in and out really quickly. I know it can be kind of visually confusing for those watching, but it can kind of be I can kind of move really fast when I'm doing my work, and I'm sorry if it's like difficult to follow, and I will try to slow down. Make that purple, and we'll make this, I don't know, yellow. This isn't the whole thing here. It's a little quiet. Let's try a different waveform, and we'll repeat this. Go, now it'll just loop. Ooh, that's nice. Nice deep sound. A little quiet though. We can fix that. Yeah, it's just kind of quiet, so it's a little hard to hear. I like the sound of it, but I don't think it's gonna work. See, they're all kind of interesting, and they all give it a different feel. And it all depends on what you're going. Let's maybe not worry about it too much. We'll just stick with this and turn it down a little bit, because it might be too much. But here's another cool thing we can do. Now we have all this. We'll add another effect. This morph filter. This is a thing built into Cubase that I use a lot, and I love it. Here, let's watch this. So yeah, that's really fun. You can just play with that for hours. Yeah, I guess probably now's a good time to cut it. But yeah, Cubase. You know, I say that they all kind of do the same thing, and they do, and like they all have little strengths that others don't have. And like one of the things that Cubase has is a lot of really good built-in effects. That's like a big strength of Cubase, and I just really like its workflow. Ableton's really good if you want to do live stuff. If you want to do like live electronic music, Ableton is like the way to go. So those are the two that I know really well, and I like both of them for different reasons. But anyway, yeah. Thank you, everybody. I'll just put this on repeat and turn it way down. There we go. Yes, thank you so much, everybody, for coming and asking so many good questions. It was fantastic. You were all great. You all had really good questions, and it was really fun. And thanks for coming. And if you have any other questions, I'm sure there's a spot somewhere in the Discord to talk about music stuff, and I will be there. And you can ask further questions there, or you can talk to me at Twitter. I'm Ben Prunty at Twitter. Feel free to ask more questions. Yeah, Time Traveler, I hope to do more Music Workbench stuff, and maybe, yeah, I hope to do, like, some soundtracks with commentary and such. But yeah, thank you everybody, and I will see you all later. Good night.